Hi, welcome to Blacticulate, a podcast series featuring UK young black professionals, where we find out how they do what they do, so you can too. Or not. After all, it is your life. Guys, welcome to another episode of Blacticulate. It's a new year and there's a lot of new news. I've got new equipment, so hopefully the sound is epic. And in front of me, I've got an amazing woman. In fact, I have amazing people as my guests, regardless. And I've got Cherish. Cherish, say hi.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me.
No, it's a pleasure. And I know you via Joy. We've only met once,
Yes,
haven't we?
Yes, we have.
And it was for her 30th birthday, Joyce. I hope she won't mind me telling people.
The whole world.
And Joy was like, I need to meet you
Yes.
because you're amazing, which is true. Now, I kind of don't want to do you a disservice by almost giving you an intro whilst you're here. You might as well tell the people who you are and let's take it from there.
Okay, well, hi, everybody. Thank you for having me again, Ade.
No, pleasure.
Who am I? That's a very interesting question. Well, we can start off. I'm Cherish. I was born in Zimbabwe. I was raised in Zimbabwe and I moved over to London when I was 11 years old. I'm now 25, so I've been here longer than I have
when you're in Zimbabwe.
Exactly. But it's really interesting because I've always considered myself to be Zimbabwean rather than than to be British or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's an area that I'm sort of exploring now. Am I Zimbabwean or am I British or am I both?
But do you feel both or do you feel?
I do feel both, but I don't know whether there's a space to be both. Because I do feel like you are, I don't know, like I do feel either I commit to being British and I go all the way and, I buy a house and I settle here and I do all of that good stuff, which is great. But I also feel like I'm letting my family down because, they only moved here for economic reasons. We didn't move here to come and settle.
To settle.
Exactly.
Right.
But then there's that
conversation. This conversation's never really ever
discussed.
Yeah.
I mean, in academic circles, they do call us the third culture kids.
The third culture kids.
Yeah. So we're on the fence. We inhabit two worlds.
Okay. So you were born there. Okay, sorry.
Yeah.
So
I was born there and moved over, and so I've lived here longer than I have lived in Zimbabwe. Went to school here, did my university here. Now I'm working as a teacher. I teach philosophy in a boys' school, secondary school, and that's been for the past 2 years now.
Right.
And that's been really cool.
I always find teachers who are particularly young, and you are very young. I always find that interesting because it's like at my age, at that age, I mean, I'm slightly older than you, just slightly.
Don't mind.
I won't tell my age too much, but I don't think I could teach kids, because I still feel like I'm learning.
I'm still a kid myself.
Yeah.
I don't look at it as teaching as such. I look at it as having a conversation with them because the difference is, I think, once you're older in age, you are now then teaching, is in that, you are instructing. There's a distance between you and the students. But I find that because I am closer to them in age, I have their language, I understand where they're coming from, especially with my sixth formers because they're 17, 18, they're like my little brothers.
Yeah.
So the discussion is easier, the conversation to have is easier. There's not much of a gap between us in age or in ideas or where we're coming from. So having a discussion with them is easier. I'm not necessarily teaching them, I'm just pointing out things like, have you thought about this? Have you thought about that?
I see. Isn't that's almost like going into higher education where they don't teach you, but they allow you the space for you to self-develop and learn.
Exactly.
So how'd you get into teaching? And
How
why
did I
teaching?
get into
Yeah.
My parents are teachers. So my dad was a head teacher. My mom was a primary school teacher. And I've sort of always grown up in a household full of education. Even my uncles, my grandparents, that kind of thing. And
Jeez,
it's just...
is that pressure?
No, it just made sense.
Okay.
Yeah, it just made sense because actually education wasn't something where we hated going to school. Actually, we enjoyed going to school because the opportunity to learn new things. And it's that drive to actually to think to yourself, I don't know this. I can know this. How can I find out more about this? And then going off and having that adventure and learning. So I went into teaching, I finished my degree.
Oh, no. Guys, we are in the BFI South Bank. In fact, maybe I don't want to tell people that in case they start hoping they can actually catch.
Exactly. We'll give it a moment.
Yeah, forgive us about the
announcement.
But
there we go. Yeah, so I grew up in a household of teachers, and education has always been a thing very important aspect of our lives. So going into teaching was it was sort of a natural progression. But I don't think for me teaching is the last stop.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's a stepping stone to where I want to go. It's not the last stop, but I do enjoy it.
Stepping stone to what? What's next?
What I've started doing now.
Amazing, and I think this is why I brought you on. Look at the way we've naturally just gone in.
Exactly, naturally gone into teaching. Now we are here, which is what I've started now, which is a charity that works to support girls' education. Because what we found and what data has shown us is that girls are marginalized, and they're marginalized basically because of their gender. Culturally, girls are looked at as, they should be at home rather than at school.
Is this global perspective, or is this Western, or is this?
No. I think it's more. I mean, you do tend to get it in sort of third world countries. You do sort of get it in Asian countries as well, but we're primarily focusing on sub-Saharan Africa. So we're primarily focusing on, closely right now, we're working in Zimbabwe. We're working in Congo recently, but it's the cultural sort of norm that it's better for us to send boys to school because we have more money to do that. So it's not just the culture, it's also the economics of the country, the economics of the family. Can they afford to send a girl to school?
Yeah.
No. It's better to keep the girl at home while she's tilling the land or while she's looking after the household, etc. But we're in the 21st century. We've got to the point now where we cannot make an argument to say girls cannot go to school.
Yeah, that's true.
It's ridiculous that we have girls not in school. So
Cherish, before we do continue, because I can see the
I'm
passion
getting
there,
in there.
the passion there, and I definitely want that. Because it's auditory, I think my listeners will be able to actually do two things simultaneously.
Yes.
So do you want to tell us the name of the charity?
Yes, I can do that.
And the website, so we can actually have a look at it whilst we're hearing your...
So we've just started. I started this in May last year.
Wow, okay.
And the name of the charity is Effective Education Africa.
Effective Education Africa.
Yes. And the reason why it is Effective Education Africa is we want an education that is effective. We don't want to just send girls to school, or it's not just focusing on girls actually, it's focusing on both girls and boys, but actually the data says that we need to focus on girls more because there's a disparity there. Yeah. And we address that issue first. Once we have girls into school, then we can start talking about a holistic education for both boys and girls. It's effective because it's meant to be effective because we want a holistic education. So yes, we want to teach them how to be able to learn to read and write, ABCDs, etc. But what does it mean to be an independent woman who's going to make their own decisions? Because this is a power that their mothers did not have, and it's a power that they will be able to harness themselves. But how do they utilize that power? How do they use it effectively as independent young women growing up in the global world? So Effective Education Africa. Yeah. And because we are new, we are still setting up our website, but your listeners can find us on all the social media platforms. We are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we are also on Twitter. It's EEA Africa.
EEA Africa.
No, EE Africa.
EE Africa.
Yes, I didn't make a mistake. EE Africa, yes.
No worries.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, as always, I'm going to put this in the show notes on Blacticulate website. So everything we discuss is always going to be in the show notes.
Yes.
Geez, that is no mean feat. That is not easy.
No, it's very difficult because I have a day job.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to, with the charity, we're trying to penetrate into a world that's saturated with so many other charities. Yeah. And it's trying to find a way that, even for us, how can we be effective in operating?
How many of you are there? You say us?
12 of us.
Oh, wow.
So, yeah, so we have a team. I have a team of 12. It's not just me. That's another thing. It's no mean feat. I can't do it by myself. Yeah. I have an idea, but I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by a good team of supporters, where everyone has got an area that they're researching or they're working on and trying to pull our ideas together.
Okay, so we've gone straight into that. I kind of almost because
no,
okay, guys,
backtrack.
no, we can backtrack. Yeah, because guys, I gotta sort of let me tell you my format a little bit. Whenever I have guests on, what I try to do is get just, I guess, conversation prompts. So I normally email them and just ask them for a couple of bullet points. Just in case conversation gets dry, which is obviously rare, but just in case. And with Cherish,
you're not going to do this.
I'll put you on blast.
Oh my goodness,
I'll put you on blast. She gave me a book, pretty much. I couldn't believe it, and it's just so fascinating. So much so that I was really excited for this conversation. And like, okay, so just to give you just a a snippet. I asked for like any interesting stories and whatnot, like a background. And obviously she's from Zimbabwe, as we've heard. But also she went to York University, then she went to Ohio, then she went to South Korea, then she went to Jerusalem, Israel.
Yes.
Now, when I read that, I was like, we need to understand how this is possible. How is a black woman
in all these different parts?
What right do you have?
I know.
Joking.
What right do I not have?
Exactly.
You
I'm
know?
teasing.
Exactly.
I'm teasing.
Yeah.
Kill it. So can you almost? We're gonna backtrack. How was this possible? How have you got yourself into
Different
all of
spaces.
these different spaces, and what were you doing in these spaces?
Okay, so I went to York St. John University and I studied theology and religious studies because I've always thought actually religions are interesting, and it's the power that they have over people or the power that they don't have over people. It's an aspect that we need to explore. So I was there for 3 years, and while I was there, my university had a partnership with a university in South Korea.
Okay.
And there was a 3-week program to teach English as well as supporting the teachers out there teaching English to North Korean defectors. So working in the university. So that was quite interesting. And just signed up, I was volunteered. I said, yeah, I'll be willing to do that. So we
Was
went
there a lot
over.
of sign-ups, or was it
No,
just
there
you?
wasn't. No, it was just me. That'll be awkward.
Yeah. You done. You through.
Yeah,
Okay.
no. There were 6 of us actually, 6 girls, from the same course, and we went out there for 3 weeks. It was good. It was a good experience. Very different, culturally very different. But and I used to get stopped in the street a lot. Actually, people thought I was Beyonce, which it's not even. And that in itself is also very interesting because it's not that they thought I was Beyonce. It's just the color thing. It's like, oh, we've never seen a black person. And I think the 3 weeks that I was out there, I think I saw maybe on two occasions I saw black people, and that was in church. So,
okay.
So we went to church, and that was in church. So I was like,
Interesting.
oh, okay, hey, nice to see you. So that was nice. So that was South Korea, and while we were there, we went with the vice chancellor, and she was telling us about the conference that she was part of, that will be running that was meant to run in the November. So we went in the August. And then in the November, they were running a conference in in Jerusalem.
Right.
And she was just talking about it, and they were discussing, she was mentioning, the program, and they wanted some student ambassadors, that kind of thing. Like, well, we're here.
Yeah.
Would you mind if we come along? And she said, if you're willing, here's the form. Why don't you fill it out? Send it back to me. So we were sitting, it's the way we're sitting right now. And then she emailed us the form. We completed the form on our phones, sent it back to her. She approved it, and we were going to Jerusalem. That was it. So yeah, that was that. So we went to Jerusalem University, and we were there for 3 days because it was just an academic conference. But that was quite good actually, because it was discussing about peace and reconciliation and how best we can make peace and what that means, and whether peace is something that it's a notion that's relevant for that part of the world, and how it is best achieved for that part of the world.
That's interesting because I heard somewhere there was like a sort of just a public sort of vox pop where they asked, will humans ever stop fighting war? And unanimously people said no.
Yeah.
But is it human nature, war?
I think so.
Oh,
I think to a certain
so
degree.
there'll never be peace.
Well, it's interesting because actually when you have more than 2 people, you have the probabilities that you're going to have disagreements are increased. And we have more than 2 people in the world, and we have now nation states. We've got boundaries, we've got possessions, we've got power. Of course you're going to have situations where people disagree, and nations do disagree, hence why we have the UN Security Council. And whether that's a relevant body now, that's something that we can discuss.
There's so much topics that we're going to have to get you back again.
Oh my goodness. But
we
yeah,
don't have enough time.
But yeah, and I mean, it's part of human nature. I mean, look, do you have any siblings?
I do.
Yeah,
I do.
even in your household.
Yeah, that's
so
fine
even
all
that
the time.
conflict, it might not be nuclear war, but even those conflicts that you do have, those disagreements. So it is part of human nature, and I think it helps us grow.
But fundamentally, if you're looking at it, especially from a sibling context, there's love. That's the foundation of it. So we know when we do have conflict, it's not something that is going to be forever.
Exactly.
So
maybe if we do have a loving world, a world with more understanding, then it's likely that we will have peace.
Okay.
Yes.
So another of the bullet points I put out there was like your challenges, right? Because
Yeah.
guys, those who obviously listen to and subscribe to Blacticulate now always ask the challenges, specifically in terms of what it is. My subjects, I say subjects. That's such a my guess. I'm gonna edit that bit out.
I hope so.
My guest, the challenges my guests face in doing what it is they do.
Yeah.
Now, you must have loads.
Quite a few.
And how do you overcome them, if you do at all?
I think the best thing is pacing myself.
Okay.
Because you can never understanding that you can never do everything all at once, and there's always going to be something on your to-do list. Getting to grasp with that, having that understanding and accepting it, then that makes it easier to deal with things, and then you pace yourself. So, but then
give context.
Yeah, so I was going to say,
sorry.
I was getting there.
You're with me.
So we can have, a number of different challenges. So we can take, for example, the simple one is time. How do you effectively manage your time? The way I do it is I divide my day. So I have three major aspects. I've got work, so my teaching. I've got my own personal development, so my self-care, my parents, my family. That's a separate segment, hang out with my friends. And then I have the charity. So I divide my day according to those three segments. So in the morning, I might do my teaching. If I go to work, spend the day doing that. Come back home, spend time with my family. In the evening, I work on my charity. And then next day, if it's the weekend, I change it around. At my weekend, Saturday, start with my family, do the charity in the afternoon, and in the evening, I mark getting ready for going back to school. So that's how sort of I manage my time. When it comes to other challenges that are not sort of external challenges, so how maybe people perceive me or how my expectations on me, that's very interesting, because like one of your questions was whether the challenges relate to being a woman and whether they relate to being a black woman. And it got me thinking about where I work. So I work in a grammar school, and the majority of the students that we have are not from the ethnic background. They're ethnic minorities. No. I mean, it's starting to change now in that, we've got more students coming in. So the issue with that is the staff members do not reflect the growing number of ethnic minority students that we are getting.
Right.
So that's an issue of how do I relate to students who are coming from a completely different background to where I'm coming from. And of course, the point of connection that we have is the work, but these are children. I mean, they are students, but they're also children nonetheless, and we have to take that into consideration as well. And also, another thing I think that I mentioned for you was the issue of being the strong black woman stereotype.
Yeah, that stereotype.
And I think for me it's very topical right now, because it's something that I'm starting to deal with. That actually I am a strong black woman, but I'm not a strong black woman in the way that I'm expected to be. That I do have moments of weakness, I do have moments of stress, and actually I am allowed that space to go off and de-stress and to grow and be by myself without having to play up to expectations that I did not agree to. I didn't agree for you to perceive me in a certain way, and therefore I shouldn't have to play into that, and being vocal about that. So for example, at work, when I'm dealing with students or I have issues with students, other staff members are very surprised. Like, why do you have a problem with this? Why are you having issues with discipline, for example? Because you're meant to be able to give them one eye as a strong black woman, and they're meant to be exactly, and they're meant to follow your instructions without any issues because you're this strong black woman. But actually, no. Students are students. I'm still a human person, and I'm still a human being, and they will have issues with me regardless of whether I'm a strong black woman or not. And even having to educate my colleagues, then that's very unhealthy for you to hold that opinion of me, that I should be able to deal with anything that comes my way. In the way that when it's you have that problem with the student, I'm meant to give you that space to deal with that issue. But it's not, it's not
reciprocated.
Exactly. So that's another issue. Yeah.
So are you educating your colleagues?
Yes, I mean you have to. You have to, especially in the space that I'm in. I'm one of two young black women working in my school, and there's maybe 150 plus staff members. So you have to be vocal. You have to say, actually, this is not on. You have to challenge people, and it's very delicate, because oftentimes these are members of staff who are older than me.
Yes.
So having that discussion,
you are young.
yeah. having
You
that
are
discussion
young.
is difficult.
And you definitely look young as well.
Really?
Black don't crack.
Don't crack. It doesn't crack. Catch up with me when I'm 50 and we'll see.
Yeah, for sure. It's funny when it comes to stereotypes. We take the ones that are good, but we'll discard the ones.
Exactly. That's what we just did. Because that one is true.
Yeah, well, we'll take it regardless because we don't get many positive ones, do we?
We don't.
So, God, guys, I mean, I think you can agree with me. Like, Cherish, you're phenomenal. You really are. Well, yeah, you're amazing. You're positive. You know, you're battling things that need to be battled. And in particular, I think there was something I wanted to get. I wanted to get a story out of you, which you told me off record, but I'm gonna get it on record about beating up someone.
Oh my goodness.
And that sort of shapes you, who you are.
Yeah, it's funny because last night we were talking about this story in my house because my grandparents are over they were over from Zimbabwe for the Christmas period. Well, they've been here for 6 months, and we were just talking about
That's
memories.
more than Christmas period.
I know. I was like, wait.
They must have a passport.
Might as well live here. So they've been here for a while. So we were discussing, like childhood, looking at pictures, etc. And then I re-mentioned the story because I was telling everyone that I was coming to see you today. Basically, what happened is, I can't remember the exact date, but some time ago when I was quite young, my parents, I don't know, maybe Coca-Cola still does this. Coca-Cola ran a competition, and my parents won a blue BMX mountain bike, and we were so excited about it. I remember I was looking forward to it. So what, as you do as a child, went to school and I told all my friends about it. And I remember this one boy in particular. I got his name last night actually. I'm gonna name and shame. His name is Tonderai.
Oh no!
Name and shame. So Tonderai did not believe me. He didn't believe us, and I wasn't happy about that. And all the way from school, because we lived down the road, all the way from school, he kept taunting us, saying, you're lying, blah blah blah. Where's the bike? Whatever. And it got to the point where I was just fed up, and that was it. So, threw him a punch, and next thing you know, we were on the ground fighting, and having that physical confrontation. But that's not the main point, because as I was talking to my parents about it, other stories came up as well, and they were like, actually, you've always been so vocal. You've always, you've always stood up to say, actually, this is wrong. But maybe fighting was not the best way to sort of solve that problem. But I've got to the point now where I've recognized that one of my strengths is when I do see something that I'm not happy about and I do think it's not fair. And for example, with girls' education, maybe they don't necessarily have the voice or the resources or the privilege to be able to say, we need to change the situation. If I have the resources, and in this case I do, and the privilege, and in this case I do, I should be able to stand up for them and say, hey, we should be doing something about this.
Not many people think that way.
And I think a lot of people do need to start thinking like that, because if we're going to have a world where we don't have war, we don't have the conflict that we were talking about before, we need to be able to stand up for each other, because you never know who I got here in this position that I'm in to be able to talk to you, to have this privilege, to be able to be educated, to travel around the world, because somebody stood up for black women. We are in this position to come out and mingle with society because somebody else stood up for us. So what makes me think just because I've made it, or a little bit, I shouldn't be able to stand up for somebody else?
Yeah, you want to pass the baton on.
Yeah.
So how are you doing that? I mean, obviously you got your charity, but then also I think you mentioned about support, about girls' education, but supporting.
Yeah. So support groups, you mean?
Yeah, you mentioned you've got some support groups.
Yeah.
Am I right in
So,
saying that?
yes,
Because
definitely.
how come a lot of people don't know about these? I mean, is there a marketing issue?
I think so.
Advertising, do you know? We need to shout about this. I mean, I guess this is why.
I agree. I think we do need to shout about it, because actually another thing we need to acknowledge is we are living in a hostile, hostile environment where support groups for young black women is not something that you can walk into the South Bank Centre and say, hey, where's the room for the support group? It's not a space that's conducive for that. So we do need to be creating. We are starting. I'm very happy that I'm seeing a lot of black girls who are starting to create their own spaces where they have their own music, they have their own images, because if you tend to the mainstream media, black images for young black women are not very positive.
No.
So what we're trying to do is to create spaces where we feel comfortable, and we don't know what it means to be a young black woman, but a space where we can start having discussions with each other. So
Yeah, name some.
Yes, I'm going to name some.
Let's kill it.
Yeah, I'm going to name some. So in March, we are going to be starting with, so there's a project called the Jacaranda Project.
The
Jacaranda.
Jacaranda
The
project.
Jacaranda is a tree in Zimbabwe, and it flowers purple flowers. Its flowers are purple. And the idea behind that is in the same way that a jacaranda tree needs, water, nourishment to grow, etc. It's the same way that we need water and nourishment to grow and support. So the idea behind that is for us to get together and support each other as young black girls doing activities that are enriching. So for example, journal writing. How best can you journal in a way that you are getting the best from what you're getting down? Goal setting. How best can you set goals, long-term and short-term goals? How can you measure that what you're doing, the impact of what you're doing? What does it mean for you to be successful? How can you relate to your other black sisters? Because another thing that we have is in the black community, women, it's very rare for women to support each other.
Why is that? Do you know? Do you have any ideas?
Well, I can give you a number of theories.
Yeah.
But I don't think they will be very politically correct.
Hey, I mean, you can kill it. It's up to you.
Yeah.
Because
no,
I'm
do you know
really
what
interested
your listeners can do? What your listeners can do? They can come to the Jacaranda project, the first meeting that we're going to have at the end of March, and we can talk more about why we are in this situation, why in the position that we are in as black women, because actually it's all these stereotypes that feed into like you cannot cry, you should always be strong, you should always be carrying on, you should always go because you can't stop and break down. Or mental illness, for example, is something that's not talked about in our communities. But what we're trying to do with the Jacaranda Project is to be able to have those kind of discussions and say, hey, if you have a problem, share it and let's talk about it. So what we're hoping to have is not just have discussions that go nowhere, but we want to link ourselves to psychiatrists, therapists, counselors to say what's the healthy way for us to grow? How best can we develop in our self-care regimes?
Right.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So all sorts of topics ranging from hair, how best to look after your hair, how best to eat, what should you eat, how best to be ethical when you're buying clothes. And
so how does that come together? I mean, I guess it's almost bringing this to a nice bit of like how-tos. How do you start a Jacaranda? Am I saying that right?
Yeah, you are.
Jacaranda project.
Yes. So I didn't start it. So
Okay.
a Zimbabwean girl called Rumbi started it.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
So and she got in touch. We met. Rumbi and I met. I think. Do you know Belinda?
I
Do
do.
you know?
Belinda Oates.
Yeah. Belinda Bonfrey.
Oh no, I do. I actually also know her.
Yeah.
as well.
How many Belindas do you know?
I know a lot of
Yeah,
Belinda.
clearly. Yeah, exactly. But also Belinda Bonfrey. She started another group, self-support, a support group for black women called Negritude, and that focuses on the writing. Yes, so that focuses on the writing aspect and getting sort of African women in the diaspora having a platform where we all come together, and that's actually coming together really well. That's also on Facebook. That's coming together really well in that we have older generations passing down wisdom to us and sharing with us, a 33-year-old working in whatever form they're working in, talking about the issues that they had when they're 25, the issues that we're having, and they being able to shed light on that. So that's actually quite good. What was your question? Your
So my question is almost how do you, because you say you didn't start the Jacaranda project,
I didn't
but
start
I'm
it.
just curious to know how does one start a project like this and get the people?
I think
it's almost like, the tools and resources.
Yeah. I think firstly it comes from your point of need. For Rumbi and myself and Sekai, she also is involved in this, it came from us not being able to see the spaces that we want to be part of.
Okay.
So therefore we need to create the space because we're not going to wait for somebody else to create a space. So that's how we started, and then being able to have conversations. And another thing that I mentioned is putting yourself out there, engaging with people, talking to different people, putting yourself in introducing yourself and say, this is what I'm thinking and this is how I'm feeling. Not everyone is going to be positive and take what you're saying on board, but meeting up with different people, and that starts a conversation. It starts off with a conversation, and next thing you know, you have a Facebook group. Next thing you know, you have a brunch, and you're now having book clubs, you're having meetups, and you're talking about different things, and it just sort of spreads. But going back to your earlier point that you mentioned about marketing and advertising, I think that is something that we need to do that, because there are a lot of these small groups, but there's not an umbrella, sort of not body, but an umbrella to bring everybody together, platform to bring everyone together. because a lot of girls are going through, especially 2015. You can't deny, for Black women in particular, you can't deny that 2015 was a very pivotal year. You know, with a lot of things that were happening in America towards Black women, in the attack on the Black women, for example, from the media, from the police, the issues of social justice, etc. So you can't leave 2015 without thinking to yourself, hey, hold on a minute, I'm being attacked here, I need to do something about it, and therefore, who else do I need to talk to, and having that kind of discussion.
Yeah, God.
Yeah, so we do need a platform. We do need to get our voices out there. We need to create. We need to shout. We need to shout. Enough is enough.
So, just God, I mean, you're giving me some gems. You're inspiring me, and I'm not even a Black woman.
but then that's
I'm
important.
joking.
You're a Black man.
I'm a Black man,
Yeah,
and you
that's
tell me
important.
which doors you want me to break down, because I will do that for you.
Yes,
100%. I understand I've got privilege in this patriarchal
yes,
society.
you do. You
that
really
I
do.
will happily
So I think
break down the pillars
Yeah.
for you. Just tell me where.
With us.
With you.
With us. We can do it.
Okay.
With us.
Okay. So I'm gonna almost round this up, because there's a few just light questions I want to ask.
Yeah, sure.
But in order to start a project, you need to understand whether or not there is a need, and it often is born from a frustration or something in which yourself find, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me out. You're an educator.
So
you're a teacher.
you said something from a frustration?
Frustration where it's critical. There's a catalyst.
Or you identify. So catalyst, yes, or you identify something. So it's like the same way that you start a business, right? So you identify the best, the niche market or whatever the best point that you would enter. But I think mostly for me, because these issues are very emotional. Yeah, they are coming from a point of frustration, a point of like, why am I being denied? Like I do exist, I am a being. Why am I being denied in all these spaces? And therefore, I need to. If you're not going to let me in your own space, that's fine. I'll create my own space and I'll grow in.
But that's difficult because considering, for one of a better word, the people who I guess financially support us in order for us to have the basic needs, they've already got their spaces. Do you know what I mean? So like, I think one of the things you mentioned earlier on is the fact that how do you find yourself as a Black woman penetrating the formal, I guess, white world?
Yeah. It's difficult. It's so difficult because it's so many elements with that. How do you look? How do you dress? Everything. How do you sound? Or what's your name? It's difficult, and it's also to do with connections. It's who do you know? But actually, especially like I mentioned to you before, for me and most of my friends, we are from a poor, low-income migrant background. We don't have the connections to be able to say, hey, I'm going to walk into this center or this place and pitch my idea, and therefore my idea is going to be accepted. And we're also having to fight against this this idea that we've been brought up to believe that because you're Black, you have to work twice as hard. But actually, that's not healthy. You are valuable in yourself without having to push yourself above. I'm not saying don't work hard. Of course, work hard.
I get you.
But you should be accepted.
Okay, guys. Well, geez, Cherish, it's been phenomenal. Really is. Thank you for blessing us with your voice. Now, I just want you to tell the people how they can get in touch with you.
Yes.
As well as how they can help, because fundamentally this is a platform to help everyone.
So how people can help
you in your endeavors, your projects, your activities, as well as how they can get in touch. And obviously, if there's anything that we haven't discussed that you feel they ought to know, because I know we've touched upon a lot of gems.
Yes.
But there might be something we've overlooked.
Okay.
And obviously I'm going to get you back, so.
Right. Oh, well, okay. I'll make sure I write that in my diary.
Yeah.
That'd be great. So to get in touch, you can find the charity on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, all under Effective Education Africa or EE Africa.
Okay.
Or to get in touch with me personally, you can find me on Instagram and Twitter under Zoe Bere. So Bere, Zoe Zoe Bere. And in terms of how they can help my work and what we're doing with girls' education, follow us on Instagram, Facebook. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter to keep up to date on what we're doing. That way, you can find points of contact. We'll be doing fundraising events, that kind of thing. We're also looking for website developers, gonna put a pitch out there.
Hey, throw it out there. Throw it out there. This is the point.
No, it's so true. We're also looking for like website developers and graphic people. See, I don't even know,
No,
but
I can
we
help
need.
you out with that. Actually.
Can you?
Yeah, for sure.
Oh, there you go. There you go. See,
maybe we don't even need you.
We
guys.
don't need
No,
you. See, but it is true. But it's the conversations that I was also gonna say. The last thing is just making your point of need known to people, and that way you never know who somebody knows or what skill that they have, and they will be able to utilize and help you out with that. And that ties in with not being afraid to take opportunities just because it's something that's out of your comfort zone. Actually propel yourself, find things that are out of your comfort zone, because in those moments, that's when the test of character and your character is built.
Yeah.
So I think it's very important.
Someone much smarter than me said nothing great ever comes within a comfort zone.
Exactly. Yeah. And a mind that's stretched by a new idea never returns to its old dimensions.
Look at that. Okay, you win.
There you go. There you go. But that's
Brilliant.
it. So thank you for having me. It's been great.
Once again, thank you very much for blessing us. Hey guys, thanks very much for listening to this vodcast. I believe that's what it's called now, video and podcast. Or is it vidcast? Video podcast? Either way, we really appreciate you listening. And if you have any feedback whatsoever, anything good, anything that can make us better, please do leave it in the comment section below. Also, you can get all the info, all the links, all the resources we speak about in the description below. And last but not least, if you are someone who can teach us how you do what it is you do, because Blacticulate is all about empowering and upskilling the community, then please get in touch too. Thanks guys, you're the best, and stay tuned for another episode.